Today we're going to be touching on a couple of very important subjects that's going to have a dramatic impact on global shipping, be it you're a freight forwarder, or be it you're a shipping line, or you're an importer or exporter. The dockworkers strike in the US and the escalating conflict between Iran and Israel. Today, I'm going to be talking about how these two events can impact your import or export business almost immediately. My name is Chang, and you're watching Think Global Logistics. Let's dive into the first very dramatic topic, that is the dock workers strike over at East Coast of USA. East Coast controls 50% of the US consumption of goods through the container traffic that goes via sea freight. So 50% of the traffic enters the US through the East Coast. They have gone on strike as of the 1st of October, and depending how long that plays out, it will mean how high the price will go and how much congestion and disruptions you'll be feeling. Doesn't matter which spectrum of the supply chain you sit. Wharfies go on strike all the time around the world, in the global north countries where there are unions and so forth, right? This sort of stuff never happens in the global south or developing countries. People have political systems that does not allow it. And this is where I guess most of the ones who enjoys capitalism will look into countries with a stricter control, political control, with envy, because these countries with strict political control or regulations on such strikes operate more efficiently. That's the hard truth. In Australia, for example, wharfies go on strike once every couple of years, right? It's almost as frequent as Christmas. It's just something we have accepted over the period that I have been in this industry, which is nearly 30 years. And it's usually because of pay or working conditions. And anytime there is a disagreement between the employer and the employees, strike happens and the unions come into play and fun and games pursues. When Australian wharfies go on strike, the only people that suffers or are impacted are Australians, right? Very little gets impacted internationally because as a country, we don't mean a lot to the rest of the world. We're only 28 million people or 27 million people, depending on which statistics you're looking at. And for the greater part, whatever happens in our neck of the woods gets sort of contained within our neck of the woods. When something happens in the US, that's a different kettle of fish. Why? Whether we like it or don't, USA is at the center of the globalization reality. Yes, China makes most of the consumable goods these days. You're absolutely 100% correct. However, a lot of the technology, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the the supply chain do eventually relates to USA. Because a lot of the heavyweight of names that we all know, the brand names and what have you, have USA as a centerpiece when it comes to a market for selling its product or a production or even research and development side of things, right? Even, for example, let's look at US military. You think everything is made in USA when it comes to a US bomb? Absolutely not. Probably, I would dare say, maybe 10, 20 countries get involved with producing a piece of arm that is, US branded. When you have such a disruption in an entire coastline which controls 50% flow of goods, that's going to have an impact across the board, be it you're an arms manufacturer or you're a food producer. So it's going to have an impact on everybody, not just USA. But let's just focus on USA precisely at this moment. There will be a mad rush to the West Coast, right? So West Coast is going to be jam-packed. It's going to have a lot of disruption, bottlenecks, and what we have witnessed over the course of COVID is that these systems will crumble very, very quickly. We have already seen an immediate impact on pricing. For example, right now from Australia to USA, an export container of 40 foot, they are going up by $1,000 per vessel. Between now and the next 4 weeks, there'll be $4,000 worth of increases already factored in to the pricings that are distributed by shipping lines. As of the second half of October projected, a 40-foot container from Australia to USA will cost no less than $7,500 US. the damage has already been done, even if it's just for a week. Why? Because amount of volume of cargo that goes through those waterways, and what it will mean for the disruption it will happen through the bottlenecking, through the delays and the stockpiling of cargo that needs to be managed or processed, let's call it that. Later on, it will mean bad news for all the countries that needs to supply US or needs to get goods from the US, because that effectively means everything will come to a screeching halt, and transit times will double, if not triple, depending on where precisely you are getting your goods from or you're sending your goods to, because the infrastructure simply isn't there for this type of disruption. For Chinese manufacturers, they'll be going through a lot of pain because they will have a lot of cargo ready to leave, which they can't send out now because it'll be stuck on a ship. It is a pile of mess that nobody wants on their lap, because that's what supply chain is. If a link is broken here, the whole thing gets disrupted. And I will keep you guys updated as things progress and transpire and so forth. But one thing's for certain, be prepared to pay higher pricing, be prepared for longer transit times, and things are very, very fluid at this stage. It's literally changing vessel by vessel, week by week. So if you're trading with USA in any shape, form, doesn't matter if it's not going to the East Coast, but going to the West Coast, just say, look, I moved stuff from Sydney or Shanghai to Los Angeles. It shouldn't impact me. Oh yeah, it will impact you, because everybody will rush to the West Coast. Those few spaces that was for LA, for the West Coast, now a lot of buyers for that space are gonna come. And guess what? The highest paid cargo gets moved first. If you pay more, you will skip the queue. If you have some sort of special deal, be prepared for those special deals to be pulled, because they will no longer be valid or nobody would honor those rates. Because why? Supply and demand. There will be a huge demand for those West Coast spaces. One of the qualms of these wharfies are having is that they want to have some sort of law written to stop the tsunami of automation. That's a legitimate fear, because if a whole terminal is automated, you lost your job. I get it. But going on strike and having laws written to stop automation, it's not realistic, because you are trying to change the tide of times. The tsunami is coming whether you like it or don't. You can fight and struggle and you can delay for a month or a year, but you're not going to hold that fort for long, because that is the way of the future. Many nations, let's bring China to it, a lot of their terminals are already automated. Guess what? A lot of people have lost their jobs, but those people have also pivoted away to find something else to do. Maybe instead of, stirring each other up and go on strikes, encourage these union bodies to actually invest into these automations. How's that for a controversial thought? Invest into what will happen into the future. Now that's a bit smarter use of collective mind and collective smarts, because automation will come for you whether you like it or don't. Quoting Bruce Lee, be like water and flow with the situation, flow around the problem. Now, second topic, which is the Iran-Israel conflict. What does that mean for us all who are in international trade, and what does it mean for anybody who's in supply chain? Massive. This is probably bigger than any wharfie strike in any part of the world. Why do I say that? Very, very simply, three words. Strait of Hormuz. Nearly 30%, if not more, of the global oil resources comes out of that waterway. This is massive. The world still runs on oil. 80%, if not 90% of the global mechanics and the engines, and the wheels of commerce operates on oil. And when 30% of that supply gets hindered, we are all going to feel it. Some feel it sooner than later. Israel, Iran, this conflict was brewing for God knows for how long. and we all see it coming, and we can all watch it happening in front of our eyes. And without being political, the ramification is, let's focus on the oil. If conflict erupts, Iran will make sure that oil supply is disrupted, because that's a surefire way to disrupt the engine of war and to put pressure on the world. And that's including their allies, China and Russia, who I suspect up until now, understanding the importance of that energy supply, have advised Iran to practice restraints, even after all of the things that Israel has done to it, its nation and its people of late. But the cat is out of the bag now. The missiles have been fired, words have been spoken, and I fear the horses are bolted on that front now. And the next logical steps from an Iranian standpoint, if the global north starts going against it, it's gonna disrupt the oil supply, guys. And that is gonna put a whole lot of different reality and pain on everybody, including us little Australians in our big country. Oil prices will skyrocket, cost of goods will skyrocket. Europe cannot certainly afford any more impact on their economy. Japan cannot afford any more impact on the economy. USA cannot afford any more impacts on their economy. China could not afford any more impacts to the crucial trade lanes that they have so tirelessly working towards through their Belt and Road Initiative. And all that is up in the air right now. We were really facing a very dull 2025 because the economy is at the cliff face, if not already starting to falling off that cliff. And now with these coming through, I fear that this is going to cause a lot of stagflation where we do not have any real economic upswing, yet we are being hammered with these additional rising costs that is human-made. So those are the two very, very pressing realities, guys, that's going to have a massive impact to our industry and to anyone who trades internationally. And things are evolving very, very rapidly. Things are happening at a pace where nobody actually can predict what will happen today from tomorrow. Well, one thing's for certain, we'll be watching it very closely because this is our livelihood, and we will continue to bring you these updates as they happen. Thank you.